Yo, what's up, everybody? Welcome to the first episode of my Mukbang series. aka, you can say an ASMR video as well, too, because, well, why not? But, anyways, just a disclaimer here. Every 1 week, I'll do a mukbang video. Why? Well, simply put, I don't want to eat a lot because I have to admit, I've been gaining a lot of weight and I wanted to lose some weight as well. So yeah, this once. For a week I'll eat a lot, and then from now on I won't eat for like another week, and another week I'll eat again a lot, and well, you know what I mean, to lose some weight. But anyways, and a warning as well. If you feel if you're if you feel easily disgusted, then please click away. Well, if you're wondering which specific food you may be discussing with, well, I'll give you the list of the foods here. So the fruit section, we've got an apple, a banana, and an orange. On the bread section, we've got a tuna. Well, no, a bread and a tuna sandwich, basically. On the yogurt section, I'm not going to show you guys the food just in case you get disgusted by it. I'll just tell you what it is. Anyways, on the yogurt section, there's the yogurt and some almonds in there. I just decided to mix it in. And on the crisp section, we got hula hoops, salt and vinegar. On my sort of a dinner section, I've got my rice, my dal, which is like a lentil soup basically, and some chicken, like 3 pieces of small chicken. This one up. And finally we've got the noodle section, and where I'll be eating dried noodles as well too. And I know it's weird, but in my culture, it's actually it's actually pretty common to eat them. Like, they're called why. I'll describe the rest later. Okay. For now, let's get started. Okay. Sorry for waiting. And our first food we're gonna be eating is none other than the hula hoops of salt and vinegar, as I said before. Anyways, I'm not gonna sit here and just like eat. I'm just gonna watch something as well too. I'll give the link to the videos that I've watched, okay? But you'll still hear the background noise. Anyways, let's get started, shall we?
A Russian man, let's call him Alexei, is about to commit a crime. He's part of a gang that deals in illegal products. He walks down a dark alleyway late at night to meet another guy who's been told is called Vasily. The two communicated on the phone just the other day, with Vasily telling Alexei that his clients are desperate for a fix since that last big bust. Alexei told him not to worry.
Nice.
A big shipment has just come in and there's enough for everybody. We're gonna make a lot of money, said Alexei. So what exactly does Alexei have to sell? And what is Vasily so desperate to buy? Heroin? Cocaine? Methamphetamine? MDMA? The answer is none of those things. The answer is cheese. And on this occasion, cheddar cheese, that most wonderful food that originates in the country of England. These two criminals are well aware that they could do some serious time for cheese dealing. So now let's have a look at why, as well as other insane things you won't believe are illegal in Russia. Number 10, imported food products. In 2015, you might have read a story in the media about an organized Russian crime gang that was arrested for importing over $20 million of illegal cheese. Okay, you're thinking, you've heard that cheese might be slightly addictive, but come on, Russia, really? Is cheese really that bad? Is it tearing at the fabric of society? Are there infomercials in Russia being shown with eggs being fried along with the words, "This is your brain on cheese"? Well, the Russian government is indeed telling its citizens to just say no to cheese, but not because cheese is inherently bad for people. The reason is Russia's ban on imported food products that started in 2014. This was called a retaliatory food import ban because Russia was retaliating for sanctions being placed on it. The problem was, while this led to cheese production inside Russia increasing, people still wanted their delicious fix from other cheese-making countries. People wanted real Italian mozzarella on their pizza, with some Russians saying the homemade version of pizza didn't quite meet their expectations. Italian restaurant owners were up in arms about it. This didn't mean that local folks were looking at doing hard time for putting illegal French camembert on their toast.
War Thunder.
Damn it.
The military online action game has received a major update. Experience the MiG-23.
But criminals have been imprisoned for illegally importing various banned food products. Right after the ban, there was a hotline people could call if they thought an illegal food dealer was working in their area. If someone got a whiff of European cheese in their hood, they could inform the authorities and the cheese seller could go to prison. Those who were part of the cheese ring we mentioned were reported to be looking at serving 10 years behind bars. It was serious business, with one resource saying Russians were buying cheese the same way people bought weed in 1980s Brooklyn. Corner stores have become black market cheese dealers. It wasn't only cheese, of course. Illegal products could be meat, poultry, and fruits. Yeah, that means in Russia there's such a thing as contraband sausage. In fact, some Russians watched in disbelief as contraband foods were destroyed on live TV. What they beheld was the destruction of things such as Polish apples, Dutch cheese, and Danish pork. Even some ducklings were seized by the cops and then killed and incinerated. Some folks were pretty darn mad at the government, since millions of Russians live below the poverty line. Others shouted, "How can you do this? It's an act of fromagicide." But food is only the tip of the crazy iceberg. Number 9, popular blogs. So you've been blogging for a while in Russia and you've started getting very many page views per day. Damn, you're almost internet famous, and you're mighty proud of that fact. But then one day you hear a knock at the door and it's the cops. They're not happy at all about your online celebrity status. The reason for that is if a blog in Russia starts getting more than 3,000 page views a day, by law it has to be registered with the country's mass media regulator, Roskomnadzor. This law was approved in 2014 and many Russians were not happy about it. The law also meant that bloggers cannot be anonymous and that the data must be kept on Russian servers. If you break any of these rules, you could find yourself in trouble. Critics called the move a crackdown on free expression in Russia, stating that Vladimir Putin was flexing his muscles, making sure that no one could start criticizing him online. In fact, Putin takes a dim view of the internet and has said before that it is a CIA project, which is tinfoil hat level of crazy right there. But maybe there's a good reason Putin hates the internet. Number 8, memes. Have you ever seen a really funny meme containing an image of Vladimir Putin? Of course you have.
Alright.
They're everywhere.
Chris,
The memes
done.
that likely put Putin in a silent rage are the ones with the image of him riding a horse and not wearing anything on the upper half of his body. There's even one with him and US President Donald Trump on the back of a horse. Kind of funny, eh? But not so funny, according to Roskomnadzor. It's said that making fun of people in a meme is illegal, with a law being passed a few years ago. In its own words, the agency said, "These ways of using images violate the laws governing personal data and harm the honor, dignity, and business of public figures." But surely the authorities wouldn't put a person in prison just for having a bit of fun. Tell that to Maria Motuznaya, a young Russian girl who back in 2018 was labeled an extremist for posting memes on the internet. Her memes were mostly about religion and not public figures per se, but that was enough for the Russian government to send the cops around to her house and take her away for interrogation. One of the memes consisted of a group of nuns about to light up cigarettes. The caption below was, "Quick, while God isn't looking." We thought that was kind of amusing, but the Russian government didn't giggle. Far from it. Maria ended up in court charged with hate speech and offending religious folks' feelings. She was looking at a possible 6 years in prison just because of a bunch of pretty harmless memes. When she got the knock on the door and realized she was being investigated for her allegedly criminal memes, she couldn't believe the authorities were being serious. She said to the Western media, "Honestly, the first time when I was shown the warrant, I laughed and asked, 'Are you serious?' I thought it was a joke of some kind. Maybe it's my friends playing a trick on me." As her case was going on, a 19-year-old guy was also under investigation for posting memes. One of his memes compared the Game of Thrones character Jon Snow to the almighty Jesus Christ. He was also called an undesirable citizen and he was subsequently investigated. As for Maria, she got off in the end. The good news is that the Kremlin later decided to change the laws somewhat and not come down so hard on meme makers. Still, the laws are in place today, and that means you could get into trouble for posting a doctored picture of Putin riding a bear. Yeah, that meme exists. Just don't share it if you're Russian. If you think that's crazy, it's gonna get crazier. Number 7. WTF. Imagine a Russian version of Quentin Tarantino's Pulp Fiction playing in Moscow theaters. How much fun would that be? You'd hear the translation from the opening part of the movie when Samuel Jackson is interrogating the young men. "Say what one more time? I dare you. I double dare you." The next word would have been left out in the Russian version, as would a good part of the entire script. That's because in 2014, Vladimir Putin signed a law that banned all cursing in theater performances. Not only that, cursing is also not allowed in movies, TV, and the media. Get caught using bad language, and if you're a company, you could be fined up to $1,400. If it's just a person caught swearing, they could be fined $70. Imagine how much cash has to be put in the Russian government's swear jar. On top of that, if the content in any form, including books, has bad language in it, it must have a warning label on the jacket. It's said that the reason for the profanity law is to preserve the beauty of the Russian language, even though Russians curse all the time in real life, especially Putin when he sees all the memes about him on the internet. Now let's continue to explore Russia's love-hate relationship with the internet with number 6. No drugs, please. We're Russian. There are illegal substances in Russia just like there are in other countries, but Russia has taken things a little further and banned websites that talk about drugs. The move was to prevent young folks from getting into drugs. But what if folks can't find the right information about such substances? Some drug websites, such as the US-based Arrowhead, aren't exactly anti or pro-drugs, but it can serve as a useful resource if you want to know more about a certain drug. But in Russia, this could be seen as promoting the use of drugs, and so such a website or blog would be banned. In 2015, Russian authorities blocked part of Reddit and thought about blocking the entire site because there was a thread going on about growing magic mushrooms. A Wikipedia page was also blocked for a while because it contained information about a certain type of Indian hashish. In fact, in 2019, Russia banned a grand total of 21,000 websites that contained information about illegal drugs. Meanwhile, that same year, Russia stood in 4th place for alcohol consumption. Booze is such a big problem in the country that some organizations have called it a national disaster. We should add, though, that Russia has been trying to crack down on boozing. Another ban now in place is drinking in parks and other public areas. Yeah, you could be arrested for bringing out a bottle of wine while picnicking with your lover. Some of Russia's bans, though, is something we could all get behind. Number 5. Jehovah's Witnesses. You can be sure of one thing in Russia, and that's the fact that you won't be getting a knock on the door, and when you open it, there are 2 smartly dressed folks who say, "We're here to talk about the only true God, Jehovah." The US-based Christian denomination has about 8.5 million members worldwide, and those that belong to the religion have been known to turn up at the door while you're watching TV. Not in Russia. In 2017, the country outlawed the religion. If you belong to it, you will be labeled an extremist. Some people are presently in prison for admitting that they are a Jehovah's Witness and trying to spread the word. What does Putin think about the religion? He called it complete nonsense. Putin is certainly not a-religious, he's just what you call Orthodox Christian. Or maybe he hates getting his TV watching interrupted by a knock on the door as much as the rest of us. Now we turn to the darker side of Russia. Number 4. Gay Pride. You won't see the rainbow flag flying on the streets of Russia this year, or next year, or for many decades to come, and that's because in 2012 Russia banned gay pride parades for a century. Yeah, you heard that right, 100 years. In fact, Russia has what's called a gay propaganda law. It's not illegal to be gay or lesbian or bisexual or transgender in Russia, but it is illegal to outwardly be proud about sexuality that Russia doesn't deem traditional. In a country that already has quite a large number of people who are prejudiced against sexual minorities, the 2013 law only served to create more antipathy. There are plenty of activists and reasonable people in Russia that have criticized the law, but their beliefs have often led to bullying and harassment. In fact, in January 2020, news reports told us that Russian activist named Yulia Tsvetkova was placed under house arrest by the authorities. What had she done? The answer is she had posted a drawing she had created on social media. The drawing had a same-sex couple with their 2 children. The text that accompanied the sketch said, "Family is where love is. Support LGBT plus families." For showing some love, she was charged with disseminating pornography, and she could spend 6 years in prison. In an interview, she said she had posted the drawing in support of a couple who had to flee Russia after they'd adopted 2 kids. In this respect, when we ask what regular things are banned in Russia, you could say one thing is human rights. Number 3, don't forget your ID. When Russians reach the ripe old age of 14, they're told they must carry an internal passport with them at all times when outside the house. This ID is issued by the Ministry of Internal Affairs. If a person is found to be without this document, they can be held by the police. Okay, so you decide you want to see Russia for yourself and go there on a vacation? Whether you're doing some sightseeing in Moscow or are hiking in Siberia, you must have your passport on you at all times. Yeah, it doesn't matter where you are. If the cops stop you and you can't show them your passport, you could be fined. That's us giving you some sound advice. Now, let's get crazy again. Number 2, driving. Okay, so driving isn't banned for everyone, but if you are transgender in Russia, you cannot get behind the wheel. You cannot ride a motorcycle either. What is this madness, you're probably thinking? Well, the law came in just a few years ago and was supposed to cut down on traffic accidents in the country. If you don't know already, Russia is renowned for its number of traffic accidents and fatalities. But what's that got to do with transgender people? The answer is that the government has stated that trans folks have a physical or mental disability. If you're a transvestite or kleptomaniac or fetishist, you're also barred from driving. Understandably, human rights activists have called this utterly ridiculous, but it's only slightly less crazy than the number 1 illegal thing in Russia. Number 1, lacy
Okay, maybe we won't watch this since that kind of getting weird. Mm.
So why do more active traders choose IG?
Sorry for swearing. Things you should never do in other countries.
I need to think about my family.
Hey, be
Your
quiet.
job is to wrestle, live up to it. Why is touching somebody on the head in Thailand taboo?
Yes,
Why
it
can't you
is.
chew gum in Singapore? And just why can't you order a white coffee in Italy in the afternoon? Every country and region around the world has their own individual set of cultural rules that help society run smoothly. As a tourist, we can sometimes break those rules unknowingly and find ourselves embarrassed or even in serious legal trouble. So it is usually best to read up on the cultural norms, and if in doubt, look around and observe how the locals behave and do likewise. Today we'll take a closer look at some of these do's and don'ts in this episode of the infographic show, Things You Should Never Do in Other Countries. Smiling at people in Russia might get you into trouble. In Russia, smiling is considered an intimate gesture, so to crack a smile without knowing someone first would be considered overstepping personal boundaries. Never ever present someone with an even number of flowers, as this is reserved for memorials and will be taken as a gesture of impending doom. So if you fall in love in Russia and decide to make your first move with a bouquet of flowers, make sure you're not smiling and the flowers are an odd number, or else you won't be receiving much love from Russia. In India, you should definitely not shake somebody's hand, handle money, or handle food at the market using your left hand, as this hand is the unclean one of the pair and the one used for wiping in the bathroom. Also, while in India, refrain from any sign of physical affection of the opposite sex in public, as there are strict rules against kissing and touching in public, which is kinda strange coming from the country who introduced the Kama Sutra to the world. Also, don't be offended by the lack of lining up in public spaces, as the concept of standing in line and waiting patiently is typically a Western construct. Japan surely has the best sushi in the world, but if you leave a tip at your favorite restaurant in Tokyo, the service staff may see it as degrading, almost like an implication that you think they're poor. And if you happen to be in a restaurant in China, leave a little food on the plate as a compliment to the chef, otherwise he'll think he hasn't provided enough food for you to eat. Over in Italy, never order a cappuccino at a restaurant after 11 a.m., as this is considered a major break of etiquette. Italians are obsessed with digestion, and consuming milk after a meal, according to Italian logic, will mess up your digestion, so make sure you drink all the milk you want at breakfast and not after. Unless that is you are in a super touristy area where milk after breakfast is acceptable. In Singapore, it is illegal to feed birds in public. How can feeding the pigeons be a bad thing? Well, Singaporeans are proud of the cleanliness of their city, and if the birds are able to survive in the city, they are welcome. But constant feeding will cause numbers to skyrocket, and with pigeons comes pigeon poop, and that takes some cleaning to remove from buildings. It is also illegal to throw litter on the street in Singapore, and chewing gum has been banned from entering the country since 2004, so if you are planning a trip, leave the juicy fruit at home. In most Southeast Asian countries, it is very rude to touch somebody on the head, as this is the most sacred part of the body according to Buddhist belief. It follows that the feet are the dirtiest part, so never sit with your feet up and or pointing at somebody. In Thailand, any conversation about the royal family is usually off limits, and you should never touch a monk, especially if you happen to be a woman. In Southeast Asia, it is very bad form to shout, be rude, or put any local in a situation where they may lose face. Keep in mind, in Thailand alone, there are 14 different types of smiles, and only a handful of those smiles indicate the person is happy or comfortable with the current situation. In Turkey, the OK sign using the thumb and forefinger is seen as an obscene gesture, and in Thailand, the reverse victory finger gesture, thought of as a rude gesture in the UK, is considered fine and used to express the number 2. Also in Thailand, the three-finger Hunger Games hand signal was made illegal in public after student protesters used the hand signal to voice their opposition to military rule. In Germany, using a Nazi hand gesture is a crime, and those doing it will be punished accordingly. In Malaysia, you should point using only your thumbs and refrain from pounding one fist into the other open palm. Both finger pointing and fist pounding are considered rude. And in Italy, if you make the universal rock out sign with your pointer and pinky fingers extended, it means that you think the person you're directing it at is unfaithful and cheating on their partner. So be careful while traveling around the world, as one gesture could very well land you in hot water. Have you ever unknowingly gestured inappropriately?
You can eat it with, you can put some seasonings in there as well, chili powder and flavorful oil as well to make it more tasty as well. So yeah, we Nepalis eat it a lot as well. Not a lot, but like from time to time at least. It's pretty common, at least. And yeah, just. Actually, hold on. Regular things that are illegal in North Korea.
Today is what we make it. So let's never wonder what if. Let's wonder where next. If today is what we make it, let's make it good. Intrepid, good trips only.
Unless you've been living in a bubble these last few years, you've definitely heard of the world's most secretive country, North Korea. Because the country has allowed some foreign visitors to enter, and because information has been received from defectors, we've been learning some totally bizarre things about the way North Koreans are forced to live their lives in their own bubble, sheltered from the rest of the world by a controlling dictator. We feel sorry for them, which is why we think it's important for us to focus on what's really going on there. That's what we'll look into today, in this episode of the Infographic Show, regular things that are illegal in North Korea. Don't forget to subscribe and click the bell button so that you can be part of our notification squad. North Korea is so serious about controlling crime and its citizens that when various crimes are committed, not only is the assailant punished, but their entire bloodline for 3 generations too. Whole families and even entire villages have been publicly executed for the pettiest of crimes in order to teach people a lesson. If someone is lucky enough to escape from a North Korean prison camp, their whole family will be captured and brought into the camp to replace them. Let's begin with sarcasm. Some of you may have seen the 2014 comedy titled The Interview, in which Kim Jong-un had the absolute piss taken out of him. Well, apparently he wasn't too happy about that, and his regime put out terrorist threats to try to shut it down. They even allegedly hacked into Sony Pictures servers. In an attempt to avoid any further laughs at his expense, the fearful dictator banned all sarcastic comments about him and North Korea. He particularly doesn't like anyone using the phrase, "it's all America's fault," or him being described as a fool who cannot see the outside world, and doing so will land you in a prison camp. Oh, and you can forget about rolling your eyes too. Next up, mourning without meaning it. When a North Korean leader dies, it is imperative for citizens to show hysteria and intense public mourning as a sign of their admiration and worship. When Kim Jong-il died in 2011, a 100-day mourning period ensued, which saw the streets crowded with people crying and falling to their knees. Those who didn't show up to mourn faced execution, and if anyone was spotted not crying or appearing to be sad, they were taken off to a prison camp. If you think your sartorial choices couldn't possibly land you in jail, think again. You'd be hard-pressed to find someone in America that doesn't own a pair of jeans, but in North Korea, you literally won't find anyone wearing them. That's because it's illegal. To North Koreans, jeans are a symbol of their enemy America, and the denim ban imposes their anti-West and anti-USA message. Apparently, the hate for Yankee imperialists is so strong that even kindergarten children are taught to hate anything to do with USA. Anyone want to Netflix and chill? Not in North Korea. Many North Koreans have smuggled Western media into the country and have shared them amongst family and friends to give insight into the liberated world outside. But this very deed could easily land you in a strict labor camp or even worse, sentenced to death. An anti-Western film titled Propaganda, made by the North Koreans, was leaked to the outside world by defectors. This film was made to show its citizens all the things that are wrong with Western culture, and it used hundreds of clips from TV shows showing cultural, moral, and political trends that have apparently weakened Western society. Even foreign music could land you in hot water. In 1992, a female former regime propaganda officer made the huge mistake of singing a South Korean song at a party. She was so badly beaten she couldn't walk for a month, and she was also thrown in jail for 3 years. All music that is played on the radio or by orchestras must be Kim Jong-un approved, as well as praise him and communism. Forget about enjoying the new Coldplay or Rihanna album. Even admitting you know the words to their songs will land you in deep doo-doo. Want to turn to the Bible in these tricky times? Think again. Despite there being between 200,000 to 400,000 Christians in North Korea, practicing religion is strictly against the law. Just owning a Bible can get you tortured, thrown into a prison camp, or publicly executed, perhaps along with your family too. As there is no right to religious freedom, citizens are forced to worship the Kim family, who have actually been found guilty by the United Nations of crimes against humanity for its persecution of Christians. In 2013, 80 Christians were publicly executed in a sports stadium in front of thousands of people just for owning Bibles, and it is estimated that there is up to 80,000 Christians held in concentration camps. After banning Christmas, Kim Jong-un now forces a day of hero worship to his grandmother instead. All this killing giving you a headache? Don't even think of turning off the radio. All houses have a government-controlled radio installed, and it is not allowed to be turned off, ever. Government announcements are made throughout the day, and you have no choice but to listen to them. Announcements include things like, the dear leader hit a hole-in-one today on his very first try playing golf. Maybe you want to capture some still images of all the poor people around town for your next school project. Not so fast. Kim Jong-un desperately wants to hide the fact that around 40% of North Korea lives in extreme poverty and earns a salary of only $2 to $3 a month. Taking photos of the poor is a punishable offense, especially for tourists, as the beyond wealthy dictator is afraid of the country's image being tarnished and perhaps from getting in more trouble by the UN. But surely tourists are exempt from all of these ridiculous laws, right? Wrong. Freedom of travel is a big no-no in North Korea for outside tourists, and anyone who tries to explore by themselves can get into big trouble. As a tourist in North Korea, you will have your every move planned, controlled, and watched by the government, so you can forget about any ideas of solo, independent travel at your own pace. You won't even be able to use the public transport system or get into your own taxi. Traveling around the country is only allowed as part of a guided, choreographed tour, which are usually run by the Korean International Travel Company. Their guides will show you around, but you are so restricted that you won't be able to leave your hotel without your guide,
Now,
even if you just want to get something from the shop
yogurt
across the street.
and the
Otherwise,
almond.
you and your guide will be punished. It is safe to say that unless you enjoy having extremely strict limitations and being watched like a hawk, it's probably better that you don't go on a soul-searching or relaxing holiday to North Korea. But fear not, dear audience. Just when we thought all hope was lost, we learned that marijuana, of all things, is legal in North Korea. In fact, it's not even considered a drug. You can easily find it being grown in fields and can buy it at local markets. Who would have thought? So, which of the aforementioned crimes
How cruel is North Korean leader Kim Jong-un? Very cruel to say the least.
At 34 years old, Kim Jong-un is one of the youngest world leaders alive today, and he's certainly by far the most infamous. But what makes him so terrifying? Today, we'll take a look at some of the cruelest things he's done. In this episode of the infographic show, How Brutal is Kim Jong-un? In 2011, the world was formally introduced to Kim Jong-un, the third dynastic ruler of North Korea since 1950. Kim's cruelty started almost as soon as he assumed power. Faced with the specter of a possible coup from within the ranks of the nation's top political and military elite, Kim Jong-un immediately began a political purge that is rumored to have killed dozens of senior officials. In his bid to consolidate power and prevent any challenge to his authority, he even went so far as to have his own uncle executed, and years later, paranoia concerning his half-brother led him to dispatch assassins to Kuala Lumpur in 2017. But political purges are simply par for the course concerning Kim's cruelty. His real crimes against humanity are committed on a daily basis against his own citizens. Wait until you hear about the laws they must follow and the penalties they incur for breaking them. The hallmark of North Korean cruelty is known as the Three Generations Rule, established in 1972 by Kim Il-sung, Kim Jong-un's grandfather. The Three Generations Rule mandates that any serious crime warrants punishing not just the offender, but 3 generations of his or her family as well. This is, according to Kim Il-sung, the only way to exterminate the seed of evil completely. What this means is that in North Korea, if your father committed a grave crime against the state, you and your children would also be sent to a prison camp alongside him for the rest of your life. The Three Generations Rule is supposed to be only for great offenses, but testimony from North Korean defectors and escapees shows that it has been enacted for offenses from political dissent to failing to remove dust from a portrait of any of the Kim ruling family members. Conditions inside the labor camps are purposefully cruel as well, with prisoners being fed barely enough to stay alive and forced to try to catch rats and insects to eat. Survivors have described 12-hour hard labor workdays, 7 days a week, with people becoming physically stunted and deformed from unceasing work. Beatings, torture, and rape are all commonplace in these camps, and there exists no possibility of parole. North Korea's constitution technically guarantees freedom of the press, but the state does not allow any foreign or non-state sponsored media to operate. It is therefore technically illegal to operate any independent press, and this is a law that Kim's North Korea enforces strictly. All foreign media is completely banned from the nation, making it illegal to watch foreign TV shows or movies, listen to foreign radio or music, or even read foreign books. While North Korea does have a state-run version of the internet that is open to all citizens, government permission is first needed to own a computer, and only state-approved content is available. Occasionally, outside websites are made available, but they are heavily censored after being downloaded and hosted locally. Violating any of North Korea's media rules is met with strict punishment, with either execution or imprisonment in a forced labor camp. North Korea's constitution also technically guarantees freedom of religion, but Kim Jong-un's government is extremely hostile to the idea of any religion, and the practice of it is banned by law. In its place is a national ideology of Juche, a hybrid fusion of Marxism and Korean nationalism created by Kim Il-sung. Juche states that man is the master of his own destiny and that the North Korean masses are to act as masters of their revolution and in the construction of their own socialist state. The Juche ideology preaches strong nationalism and self-reliance, but makes no mention of any divine creator or other spiritual entities. Wary of what the Kim family believes to be corrupting Western influences, all other religions are banned in North Korea, and anyone caught practicing any other religion faces immediate imprisonment, often with the dreaded 3 generations rule in effect. Kim Jong-un has also continued his father and grandfather's practice of tightly controlling the movement of its own citizens. It is illegal in North Korea to leave the country without official permission, which is almost never granted. While thousands of defectors and refugees still attempt to flee across the border into China or through the heavily mined DMZ into South Korea, they do so knowing that their families they leave behind will likely be punished in their absence. Even those that manage to successfully escape, though, are still not safe, as North Korea has for a long time conducted international abductions and forced repatriations of escaped citizens. North Koreans in Japan, South Korea, China, and even as far as Europe have all been the target of North Korean abduction squads who force the individual back home under threat of violence. Sometimes they even drug them and smuggle them back home. Once returned, you guessed it, they face execution or forced imprisonment, where they will likely join whatever family they left behind in a forced labor camp. But pregnant women who are captured and repatriated face yet another of Kim's horrors, his belief in complete racial purity and Korean superiority. If a woman becomes pregnant while abroad, the child is killed, and if she is returned home pregnant, she's forced to have an abortion. One report from an escaped North Korean told of a woman in a hospital who gave birth only to have the baby immediately smothered to death. Kim Jong-un's government preaches self-reliance, yet it is completely unable to meet the needs of its own people. In its place, a black market has sprung up, and often it is the only place that food and medicine can be found. Yet Kim has continued his father and grandfather's abolishment of a free market system, so any private enterprise is completely banned in the nation. Those caught dealing smuggled goods or trying to start up their own business are imprisoned, though it is a well-known fact that corruption is so rampant among North Korea's police and military that most officials will look the other way in exchange for a hefty bribe. Theft, however, is still harshly dealt with, even things that would seem petty to you and I. In 2016, 21-year-old American college student Otto Warmbier, on a sponsored tour of the nation, stole a propaganda poster off his hotel's wall and was caught. His sentence was 15 years of hard labor for trying to harm the motivation and work ethic of the Korean people. Though he was released to the US 17 months later, Warmbier suffered severe brain trauma by then, likely due to severe torture and starvation, and died days later. In North Korea, your freedom, everything from what you watch, read, or even where you can work, is severely restricted, and there exists no due process. The country is ruled completely and absolutely through the brutality of Kim Jong-un alone, who fears dissent so much that he is willing to go to extreme lengths to prevent it. While you may occasionally get annoyed by the rules and laws in your own country, at least give thanks that, safe at home, you don't face the possibility of getting sent, along with your entire family, to prison for failing to dust the portrait of your country's ruler. So, what do you think about Kim Jong-un's brutality? Are there any unfair or unjust laws in your country? Let us know in the comments.
American cops versus British cops.
This video is sponsored by Terminator Genisys Future War. Today we're going to compare American cops and British cops, but for a second, let's imagine we are living in the future and the machines are fighting humans. Terminator Genisys Future War is the first mobile game where you get to choose whether you want to fight
No one cares.
TV screens, and long before
Alright,
that,
I see
Arthur
that
Conan
one.
Doyle and Edgar Allan Poe planted the seeds for the genre of detective fiction. The good cop, the bad cop, or even the rebel with a cause cop kind of shows in the 70s have evolved into more realistic series such as The Wire, which give us a more nuanced version of police work and those that do it. In real life, dashcam footage from police vehicles has also become a staple in the online content we consume. Today we are going to concentrate on real-life cops, and perhaps the two most famous, sometimes infamous police forces in the world, in this episode of the infographic show, American Cops versus British Cops. Don't forget to subscribe and click the bell button so that you can be part of our notification squad. Prior to what we consider an actual police force, the ancients had many ways to police the polis, or city. Slaves in ancient Greece would handle the rowdy crowds when tempers flared, while the Romans might set the Praetorian Guard on out-of-control rioters. Through the ages, there have been myriad ways to maintain public order, and also some pretty gruesome punishments for those that breach the accepted rules. In the UK, it wasn't until 1749 when a judge named Henry Fielding created what was called the Bow Street Runners, the first time Britain had anything what we can associate with today's police force. As British cities grew at a rapid pace under the Industrial Revolution, so did crime. And so on September 29, 1829, the Metropolitan Police Service was formed in London, and it is said to be the first modern police force ever created. The man behind it, Sir Robert Peel, explained why England needed cops. I want to teach people that liberty does not consist in having your house robbed by organized gangs of thieves and in leaving the principal streets of London in the nightly possession of drunken women and vagabonds. Why were they nicknamed Bobbies? Well, after their founder, Robert. As you know, the USA was noted for its Wild West outlaws. One of those was Billy the Kid, who was shot by Sheriff Pat Garrett in 1881. Like Britain, America had ways to control crime, but for a long time there was no formal police force, and so the job of keeping folks in line often went to private contractors such as the Pinkerton National Detective Agency. Systems including night watchmen, and even what some called goons for hire, weren't workable as the USA grew in population. It's thought that the first American formal police force was created in Boston in 1838, New York City followed in 1845, and by the 1880s, just about all American cities had an organized police force. Now that we know something about the history of these two countries' police forces, let's look at the present day. The number of police officers in just England and Wales has decreased significantly in the last decade, which has become a major political issue in the UK. The number in 2016 of officers in the force was 124,066, down from 143,769 7 years before that. The number of full-time officers working in Scotland in 2016 was 17,242, and the number in Northern Ireland was 6,773. That's a total of 148,081 police officers working all over the United Kingdom. The population of the UK is 65.64 million, so roughly there is one police officer for every 448 people. Much of the British media and the public are saying that is not enough, especially as the crime rate rise in the UK is rising faster than it has in a decade. This includes a rise in violent crimes and homicide. Over the pond in the USA, crime rates are much higher, and as some police departments are looking more like military units, the role of police in society has met with some controversy. Finding the actual number of sworn police officers working in the USA in 2016 isn't that easy. This is because figures given by the US Bureau of Justice Statistics haven't been updated in a few years. The total number of police agencies in the US is around 18,000, but that includes all branches of police. If we take just local police departments, that number is more like 15,500, according to PolitiFact. The old data that is often cited says that in 2008 there were 765,000 officers that had the power to make an arrest. The US Department of Justice gives the number of 750,340 for 2012. According to the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial Fund, that number has shot up and is presently about 900,000. The US population is 323.1 million, so that means that roughly there is one cop for every 359 people. One of the major differences is that in the USA, police carry guns, as do 36% of American households, according to the Washington Post. It's reported that in 2016, 135 police officers died in the line of duty, with around half of those that died being fatally shot. The Guardian reports that the number of officers killed in the line of duty in the UK is a total of 11 since 2010, although many officers are assaulted in the UK. In 2015, it was reported that 23,000 assaults occurred against officers in just England and Wales. In 2017, the Police Federation of England and Wales reported this figure to be not even close to the real number. It said there were 2.4 million assaults in 2016, meaning an officer was attacked every 13 seconds that year. 300,000 of them involved attacks with deadly weapons. The report said the average police officer is assaulted 19 times a year. On the other hand, in the USA in 2016, police officers killed a total of 1,093 people. According to Inquest.org, in the UK in 2016, a total of 5 people were shot and killed by police. The total number of people shot and killed in the UK since 1990 is 67. We should add here that regular cops in the UK don't carry guns, but armed police can be called when it's thought guns are needed. Police in Northern Ireland are different, routinely carrying firearms. According to the newspaper The Mirror, in 2016 there were 1,863,524 legally owned guns in Wales and England, most of which were shotguns. It's thought there are another 277,000 guns in Scotland and a further 150,000 legally owned guns in Northern Ireland. The same newspaper said there were another 2 million illegally owned guns on the UK streets, which has raised the question if the UK police should be given firearms. The murder rate per capita in the US is still 30 times higher than in the UK, which might not be surprising considering there are more guns than people in the country, according
This game, you're not ready for it.
Yeah, I'm ready for it.
to the Washington Post. As for assaults on officers, there were 51,548 assaults against U.S. police officers in 2015, with a total of 14,453 injuries sustained. With this in mind, how does life on the job compare between the two forces, and how do you even get a job as a police officer? In the UK, you can join when you are 18. There are no restrictions on height, but the force does ask you to be in good enough physical and mental shape to undertake police duties. No formal qualifications are required, but you will need to pass some tests to get in. Pass them, and you are in, just as long as you haven't committed any serious offenses in the past. It's similar in the US, although the police force does usually ask for a high school diploma and that you are either 18 or 21 depending on the department. You'll have to train at a police academy and have either a clean criminal record or have only committed minor offenses. There is no minimum or maximum height or weight limit, but in the academy you'll have to pass certain physical agility tests. Nowhere does it state you have to enjoy eating donuts. Wages vary, but in England, Wales, and Northern Ireland you can expect to start your career as a police constable on anything from $25,000 US to $30,000. If you work hard, UK career websites say that within about 7 years that wage can be $48,872 US. You should work a 40-hour week, although police work can often mean overtime and also emergency callouts. You'll get 23 days annual leave and also full sick pay. The pension varies depending on time worked, but the average police pension in the UK is thought to be around $20,465 a year, and the normal retirement age is 60. In the US, salaries differ from state to state, but a rookie cop working in the NYPD can expect to earn $46,288 per year. After 5.5 years, this could rise to $90,829 if you have done well. Other states have average wages closer to $30,000 and others $70,000 according to career website Cron. You'll get 10 days paid vacation to start with, but after 5 years it will increase to 27 days. You'll also receive unlimited fully paid sick days, medical benefits, dental benefits, and optional retirement after 22 years on the force. Like the UK, you will work around 40 hours a week in shifts, but that might change with overtime. How much pension you receive can be affected by multiple factors, but various websites put the average police pension anywhere from $58,000 to $62,000. With money in mind, we'll end the show there. Where would you rather be a cop, the UK or the US? Let us...
Oh. All right. Whew. That's the end of the first episode of my mukbang series. And well, thank you for watching. I'm feeling pretty full right now. Well, you just have to wait for a week until I'll do this again. Because I'll probably gain a lot of weight now. Anyways, guys, thank you for watching. And hope you didn't feel too disgusted by it. But anyways, thank you for watching. And as always, I'll see you all in the next video on Thursday, which is the reviewing series. Peace!